Origins of Dragons. Morgoth, the first Dark Lord of Middle-earth, faced a problem. For nearly 4 centuries, his fortress of Angband was besieged by the Noldor elves, and his endless hordes of orcs could not break their strength, skill, and resolve. Determined to tip the balance, Morgoth sought a new weapon powerful enough to crush his enemies. Out of this desperation came the dragons. With these beasts unleashed, the stakes of war shifted. If Morgoth succeeded, the elves would fall, and fear itself would become his greatest ally. If he failed, his dream of dominion would collapse with Angband still under siege. Over time, he perfected his dragon design, giving wings to his monsters. Yet this was only the beginning, for the dragons of the First Age would set the stage for a line of fearsome creatures that continued to evolve, each more dangerous than the last. The first dragons were not winged. Instead, they were massive, serpentine beasts bound to the ground. These early forms would later be known as Uroloki, or fire drakes, because of their ability to breathe fire. Unlike most of Morgoth's other creations, dragons were not only physically destructive, but also cunning and intelligent. Their combination of raw power, sorcerous influence, and manipulative speech made them uniquely dangerous foes. Morgoth's design allowed dragons to possess both immense physical might and otherworldly abilities. They could breathe fire hot enough to destroy armies and fortifications, while their eyes and voices could exert hypnotic control over mortals, bending them to the dragon's will. Over time, Morgoth refined his designs further, eventually producing winged dragons, which first appeared in the climactic battles of the War of Wrath at the end of the First Age. These flying dragons with Ancalagon the Black at their head represented the peak of Morgoth's twisted invention. The origins of the dragon set the stage for some of the most devastating events in Middle-earth's history. Their introduction shifted the balance of power, ensuring that the wars of the First Age and later ages would be marked by fear and ruin wherever dragons appeared. Glaurung, the father of dragons. The first and most infamous of Morgoth's dragons was Glaurung. He emerged prematurely in the year 260 of the First Age during the Siege of Angband. Though still young, he drove back the elves of Ardgalen until Fingon and his mounted archers forced him into retreat. Morgoth, angered by his servants' disobedience, kept Glaurung confined for nearly 2 centuries. When Glaurung returned in 455 FA at full size, he led Morgoth's forces in the Dagor Bragollach, or Battle of Sudden Flame. His fire consumed Ardgalen, transforming it into the wasteland of Anfauglith. 17 years later, in the Nirneth Arnodiad, or Battle of Unnumbered Tears, Glaurung again devastated the field. He broke the ranks of elves and men, scattering their armies. Only the dwarves of Belegost, protected by great masks and axes, could withstand his fire. Their lord, Azagal, dealt Glaurung a mortal wound before being trampled. Glaurung withdrew, but the battle was already lost to the free peoples. In later years, Glaurung destroyed Nargothrond. His spellbinding gaze immobilized Túrin Turambar, forcing him into tragic choices that would doom both Finduilas and his sister Niënor. Eventually, Túrin ambushed Glaurung at Cabaden Arras, plunging his black sword Gurthang into the dragon's belly. Even in death, Glaurung's malice prevailed, revealing to Niënor her true identity and driving her to despair. Other dragons of the First Age, besides Glaurung, few are named. Gustir, whose name means dread glance, is mentioned, but little is known. During the fall of Gondolin, Morgoth unleashed many and terrible dragons alongside Balrogs to destroy the city. Finally, at the War of Wrath, Morgoth revealed his greatest creation, the winged dragons. Chief among them was Ancalagon the Black, the largest dragon ever to exist. Second Age dragons. Although specific names or deeds of dragons in this age are not preserved, their presence is implied to be a continual threat. After Morgoth's defeat at the end of the First Age, many of his surviving creatures fled north into the wastelands of Middle-earth. Dragons in particular were said to have settled in the Withered Heath, a cold and desolate region lying between the Grey Mountains and the Iron Hills. From this stronghold, they would survive, multiply, and occasionally emerge to trouble men and dwarves. The absence of detailed accounts in the Second Age suggests that while dragons existed, their role was diminished compared to earlier times. Still, their continued presence meant that the shadow of Morgoth lingered. These remnants of his power ensured that the world remained dangerous, even in the long centuries before the rise of Sauron's empire and the forging of the Rings of Power. The withered heath thus became the breeding ground for future calamities, giving rise to the great dragons that would shape the events of the Third Age, including Scatha and Smaug. Scatha the Worm. One of the earliest named dragons of the Third Age was Scatha, a mighty worm who dwelled in the Grey Mountains. He plundered treasure from the dwarves of Durin's folk. Eventually, Scatha was slain by Fram, leader of the Eotheod, the ancestors of the Rohirrim. The treasure sparked conflict, for Fram refused to return it to the dwarves, and according to tradition, he was killed for this defiance. Cold drakes of the Grey Mountains. By the 25th century of the Third Age, dragons had multiplied in the northern wastes. Many were cold drakes, a class of dragons that lacked fire breath. In 2570, they began attacking the dwarves of the Grey Mountains. After nearly 2 decades of resistance, the dwarves suffered a devastating blow in 2589, when King Dain I and his son Fror were slain by a cold drake outside their halls. This disaster ended the War of the Dwarves and Dragons. The dwarves abandoned the Grey Mountains, some returning to Erebor, while others settled in the Iron Hills. Smaug the Golden. The greatest dragon of the Third Age was Smaug. Drawn by tales of dwarven wealth, Smaug descended on Erebor and the nearby city of Dale in 2770. His attack was swift and overwhelming. He slew warriors, destroyed Dale, and drove the dwarves into exile, taking Erebor as his lair. For 171 years, Smaug brooded over his treasure, spreading a corrupting influence known as dragon sickness. Smaug's reign ended when Bilbo Baggins entered his lair in 2941. Angered by the theft of a single cup, Smaug launched a vengeful assault on Lake Town. There he was slain by Bard the Bowman, who shot his black arrow into the bare patch of Smaug's chest. The dragon's fall destroyed much of Lake Town, and his death reshaped the balance of power in the north. Fate of dragons after Smaug. With the death of Smaug, the greatest terror of the Third Age was ended, but Tolkien leaves open the possibility that dragons did not disappear entirely. In the Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf remarks that dragonfire was once powerful enough to destroy most objects of the world, yet he adds that no dragon living in his time, nor even Ancalagon the Black of the First Age, could have harmed the One Ring. This statement implies that some dragons may still have existed after Smaug, though none were of comparable strength to their ancient forebears. After Morgoth's downfall in the War of Wrath, many dragons fled into the northern wastes. Over time, they concentrated in the withered heath, a barren land between the Grey Mountains and the Iron Hills. This desolate breeding ground continued to serve as the source of dragons that troubled dwarves in later centuries. Both Scatha and the cold drakes that plagued the Grey Mountains are believed to have originated from this region. By the end of the Third Age, however, no named dragons remain besides Smaug. Their presence lingers only as a shadow in the north, remembered in dwarven histories and in the fears of men. Tolkien gives no record of dragons in the Fourth Age, but the tales of their devastation endure. From Glaurung's manipulation of Túrin, to Ancalagon's fall from the sky, to Smaug's fiery ruin of Erebor, the dragons of Middle-earth left a legacy of terror and destruction unmatched by any other creatures of Morgoth's design. Want to dive deeper into Tolkien's world? Make sure to watch Villains of Middle-earth explained in detail next.